Oh, there it is. I see it. We are live. What's up, wrestling fans? Two Bows Wrestling. Two Bows? We were somebody's bows, I guess.
That is technically correct. It is the Two Bows wrestling show. Apparently, you've joined us on our very formal cotillion evening.
Wait a minute. My camera is sideways. It looks like my wall is running downhill behind us. Oh, my Lord. I've crashed.
Folks, you'd think this is the first time he's done this.
I promise I did go to school for video and audio production. There we go. All right.
It is the Two Bows wrestling show, and both these bows tonight are still in WrestleMania mode. And specifically, Doug, tonight in our main event topic, we are talking about the WWE Hall of Fame class of 2022.
And let me just say, while prepping for this, man, there are some seriously thin pickings for us to talk about, man. We are close to WrestleMania. What are we, 2, 3 weeks away at this point? And there are very few inductees actually shouted out. I get that closer we get to WrestleMania weekend, we'll get more. And there are a few rumored, which makes sense. But, what we have to talk about tonight officially, it ain't a lot.
Well, it might make it for a quick show, but hey, it is us.
It might make it for a quick show. I'm sure I could ramble about AEW for at least half an hour, 45 minutes if we need to fill time.
Leave it to Dynamite Doug here to turn a show about WWE's 2022 class into a show about AEW. But that is where we're going with it, Doug. As always, where we go first?
The opening bell.
And I guess the headline this week might be the latest on Cody Rhodes because, hey, folks, it's Mania season and he's not in AEW and he's not yet in WWE.
Although if rumors are to be believed, he's actually been in WWE for about 14 days.
Which makes it more curious that he hasn't popped up yet. There's two reports, and maybe you saw the same. Or maybe a different. But what I have read is that he's currently still scheduled to face Seth at WrestleMania, according to the Observer. But then there's others who are saying that he is debuting WrestleMania weekend on the Monday after WrestleMania, as not to detract from Mania weekend. He's being flown in privately and all that. But yes, it is, regardless of what plans they have. Doug and I have been talking here on the air to you guys about how maybe there's a holdup. Why hasn't he showed up yet? Maybe contract negotiation. No, to Doug's point, he's been inked apparently for weeks now, and this is actually a creative decision to burn the clock to WrestleMania without a Cody Rhodes appearance. I don't get it, Doug. Capitalize while the iron is so hot. There's not a bigger story in wrestling.
Exactly. I think they totally missed the boat when they were in Jacksonville last week, not to pop Cody up and run a story and start a program with Seth Rollins, if that is indeed still the plan. Everything I'm reading points to Cody debuting at WrestleMania and then being heavily involved in Raw going forward, which they've done a lot of not necessarily name drops, but for, old marks like us, the hints are there, especially on this last week, talking about Seth Rollins having his hopes and dreams for WrestleMania being dashed, a reference to, dashing Cody Rhodes from back in the day. So,
I mean, who wouldn't want to see Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins? That is a WrestleMania level match to bring Cody Rhodes back on. The fact that they have chosen not to build to it other than those cryptic hints is curious. But Cody Rhodes is not going to be leading an ROH invasion of AEW. Apparently, he is under contract to WWE.
Or is he? It's all a work. It's all a work. Come back to Papa Tony. It's happening.
So, Big E. I know we reported last week on the unfortunate and untimely injury to Big E that obviously is taking him out of Mania season, and for a while was even rumored to maybe be taking him out of the sport altogether. Some positive updates from the man himself this week, which is fantastic. But
Absolutely.
He has reported that he is feeling good, that they were indeed fractures in his neck, but not displacement. Therefore, he gets to avoid surgery. And as recent as Thursday, he's posting video of himself walking around his neighborhood, talking about how beautiful the world is and how fortunate he is, being just his normal, gracious, gotta love him kind of self, and seems very positive about making a recovery and coming back and seeing everyone. So,
man, we could all use just a sliver of that positivity that Big E has. I mean, my goodness.
If anybody is seems to be a genuinely good person that deserves the good things that hopefully a recovery brings him, it is Big E. So continue to heal Big E and get back with us.
Absolutely.
Doug, Tony Khan, you may have heard of him.
The name's not familiar. Tell me about him. Is he a new wrestler? Is he on the indie scene?
We're doing a lot of follow-ups in our news segment since we were just with you on Tuesday night. Follow up on Cody Rhodes, follow up on Big E. Here's the latest on Tony and Ring of Honor. Tony is not a shy man. It does appear to enjoy a microphone, so he gives lots of interviews and therefore is asked lots of questions about Ring of Honor. And with each one, he provides a bit more information as to where his mind is at currently and what he's thinking. But we know for sure now, we speculated last week, but we know for sure now that Supercard of Honor is definitely going to have an AEW feel to it because of the fact that it is happening in just 2.5 weeks' time. And there was only a couple of matches booked. Well, now there's another one, and this one's one that makes you want to order this pay-per-view because we have the Briscoe brothers versus FTR.
It is about time.
That is absolutely perfect. In the interview, though, talking about Ring of Honor, Tony definitely said that it's not ideal. He was not the one who obviously chose the date for Supercard of Honor, but he feels an obligation to the fans who've purchased their tickets and the restart that was announced and the matches that were already announced to just go forward, and can't be two places at once. So it's a busy night of wrestling. It's a Friday night pay-per-view, opposite both SmackDown, opposite Rampage, opposite the Hall of Fame, which we'll be talking about here in a bit. So definitely a lot going on, but especially if you got FTR versus the Briscoes as well as other ROH involvement, probably worth some checking out.
Indeed. So I'm wondering, is that Rampage? Is that a pre-tape from the live show on Wednesday, pre or post Dynamite, how they do that, or is it an actual live Rampage somewhere? Because that could give a little bit of wiggle room for Papa Tony.
For Tony's sake, I hope that it is. He definitely did say that this, for him, is a transitional show. It's a prior commitment we're going to live up to, but this is the start of the next era, and that really what ROH is going to become, even down to distribution and talent on the road. He said it's not necessarily the way it's going to look on show one, but it could give you an indication. I mean, man moves fast, so you might have a good idea of which way his head is leaning towards by watching this first show.
I thought you just said man moves. Man moves fast. Man moves. Is that somebody who's going to wrestle Luchasaurus?
Well, there is a moose and there is Minotaur, so maybe
man moose. Tony's leaning into that whole sports entertainment thing now, isn't he? With man moose.
Oh man, I don't know what to do with man moose.
Oh, that's going to be my wrestling name, Man Moose. I'm changing from Dynamite Doug to Man Moose.
NXT UK. So they are amongst the last of the promotions to have welcomed fans back into the arena in the pandemic era, where for the longest time we either had no fans or virtual fans, or even worse, no shows. But this past broadcast of NXT UK featured a full audience there at the BT Sports Studios. They film in the heart of London, and obviously it is a lot better to have the energy of real people and a real crowd there instead of what they had been doing was an empty arena and piped in noise, which only has limited value, obviously, compared to the production you get with a full crowd. WWE has announced the latest class, Doug, of Performance Center recruits. Don't know if you saw this or not.
I haven't seen this, no.
It's interesting. The members of the class include well, I'll call out those that people are going to maybe recognize or might have some familiarity with, but includes Roxy, who is a former Ring of Honor, Women of Honor champion. And also it contained Santino Marella's daughter. So yes, folks, you are old.
Wait. Are we sure it's Santino Marella's daughter and not Santino in a wig and a dress?
That would be hilarious. Or if it is actually second generation, if they're saying that it's Santino Marella's daughter and it's actually Santino Marella's son. That
would also be,
would be perfect to continue the gimmick. But yeah, Santino Marella's daughter is part of this class. Also part, Doug, and this one's a bit curious. Two of the named recruits are already working on NXT 2.0. So Kayla Inlay is one, and Fallon Henley, who had previously worked quite a bit actually on for AEW. So hardly a newcomer, and yet she's listed as a Performance Center recruit. So
interesting.
Kind of interesting. This past week, we saw the Mysterios and The Miz on NXT 2.0. Of course, Dolph Ziggler now is the current champion of NXT, and Robert Roode is part of his act and presentation there on the show. What is happening here? Is it a matter of trying to get pops for NXT's rating by having these drop-ins? It actually seems to be more than that. The Wrestling Observer is reporting that fans should anticipate that the main roster talent will be appearing on NXT every week moving forward from here on out. So I actually like that. I like, it's sort of an internal thing, but if you have a forbidden door policy of your own, you can create more intrigue, especially to the NXT 2.0 brand, where these folks could actually benefit from working with some veteran rosters. Or from roster members who are veterans, or even get some seasoning for folks like a Dolph Ziggler who maybe is gathering rust as far as his TV presentation goes. He's more than just a house show gimmick. I mean, I think having him as champion is great. This past week on NXT 2.0, Dominic Mysterio had a feature contest. Having Dominic, get a little more ring time on his own at a NXT 2.0, where some of the performers are probably around his age and skill level at this point. All of this makes a lot of sense, and I think it could add some variety if they do it this way moving forward.
It does make a lot of sense to get the veteran rub on the new folks. But to me, in my mind, all I'm thinking is those open world PvP like games where the much higher level characters camp out at the lower level character entrances into the open world and just totally murder the new players as they walk out, because they're completely ill-equipped, because they're like level 2 and then they're attacked by level 20 people constantly and just continually just slaughtered and have to respawn. Of course, that's my gamer geek take on it. Back to you, Kevin.
Thanks, Dynamite Doug, for, I guess we'll say, insight. Oh, folks. Roderick Strong is also, by the way, is part of this whole sort of internal open door policy, except he's gone from the NXT 2.0 brand to NXT UK. He appeared this week and defeated Wolfgang in the main event of NXT UK. Seemed like at the time a one-off, but no, again, reports are that this is more of a long-term booking decision and that Roderick will be sticking with the UK brand at least until he gets a title shot, because immediately he called out Ilya Dragunov, and that's a match I would love to see. So fresh matchups, when you have these kind of rosters, move them around. It makes a ton of sense.
Absolutely. I like the sound of that. No camping outside low-level areas there.
No, those are two higher ranked characters for sure. Killer Cross will debut on New Japan Pro Wrestling's American offshoot Strong in April, actually during WrestleMania weekend, and this should make fans salivate a little bit. He looks to be headed for a match with Minoru Suzuki.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh
that one is one everyone should put their money down on. But
absolutely,
Killer Cross, man, WWE missed the boat, but since being released by WWE, the very talented Cross is doing the right things by rebuilding himself, staying busy, working for a number of indies, including WrestlePro and MLW, and now New Japan Pro Wrestling. So, hey, Doug, make that call to Tony, why don't you?
You know what? Yeah, I think Control Your Narrative is in the way of them right now. Because isn't he also part of Control Your Narrative? Is he
Actually,
trying to
yeah, I think
control his own narrative?
kudos to any of the men and women who are giving themselves a second chance at life.
Absolutely.
It doesn't all begin and end to being future endeavored by WWE. So Killer
It
Cross,
truly does not.
good on you.
I think we're definitely in a better world than we were wrestling wise, even 5 years ago.
Yes, absolutely. More places to work. Go out there and work. And with that, let's talk about people who put in a lot of work. Doug, are you ready to go to the main event?
Let's talk about the people who do the work. Let's get to this main event and talk about this class of 2022 because it's a short list right now, man.
So let's talk that before we even get into the particulars. Obviously, we're talking about three people here in a bit, but the limited number of inductees really is probably due to the way that they've scheduled this event, and it's probably a domino effect of WrestleMania now being 2 nights.
That's fair.
Because of that, you have NXT's show taking place in the afternoon on Saturday before WrestleMania. Because you're on Fox, SmackDown is airing Friday night, and it's a 2-for ticket. So you've already set for SmackDown, and then the cameras go dark, and I guess over on Peacock, you turn it on, and the Hall of Fame starts. So I think the reason that they probably are keeping the number of inductees so small is that, unlike in past years where it's its own thing, it is kind of after the main event of SmackDown ends, we'll roll out a change set and do a quick Hall of Fame show. So I have a feeling this might not be an hour and a half broadcast on Peacock and not the three and a half or more hour engagements that we've been used to in the past.
That's fair. I really hadn't considered all that is going on WrestleMania weekend because it is show after show after show after show, especially with the 2-night WrestleMania and everything. But I've been trained to expect a lot of long rambling speeches by really old guys that I really loved when I was a kid. I don't think I'm going to get those this year.
I don't think you are. I really think it's going to be a tight broadcast that they're going to, again, in the past, it's a theater. There was a dress code. Even the fans were, asked to dress up and, treat it like it was a night at the Oscars. They'd have a red carpet show beforehand. And it actually was kind of nice. It lent a little, to me, an air of sophistication to this wacky world of professional wrestling that they made a big deal out of their Hall of Fame.
Absolutely, man. You get that peek behind the curtain, so to speak, where you see everybody, well, almost everybody out of character because you're never going to see Taker at something like that. When you see Mysterio, he's in a suit, very, very lucha in a suit with the mask on.
And there was no time limit. These guys could tell as much as they could go on. Yes, it could be overly long. Yes, they would usually ramble, but then in the midst of that were some of the better moments that you'd get from not having it so tightly scripted or cutting people off but you're going to be in an arena where people have just watched a couple hours of wrestling. So it's not necessarily as conducive as a theater to speeches and the like. So I'm kind of curious as to how it's going to go over. I think I'm going to miss the old broadcast where you have 5 or 6 folks and you just let it go as long as it wants to go because they've earned that right. I think you're going to see 3 really short speeches heavily focused on the first person we're going to talk about.
So, right. So do you think with those 3 that we're not getting any more? I mean, I know we're still a couple of weeks away, and the Steiners and Sid Vicious are both, heavily rumored. But do you think we stop at these 3 or do you think we get any more? What do you think?
I think we may get one more. I think we might. I don't know that we'd get both. I think they may also put in I can't remember how they refer to it, but the legacy members of the Hall of Fame, where they'll roll off 3 or 4 early pioneers or behind the scenes folks or folks that wrestled in the 50s or 60s or that most wrestling fans won't know but made contributions to the business, and they sort of put it as a montage that they air between the actual main acts that they're featuring. So I would say that because of the way that they have this thing scheduled to start at 10 o'clock, you're going to get maybe one more.
And probably, I don't know about like a celebrity, somebody inducted in the celebrity wing this year, because we haven't really talked about that. Because
let's hope to goodness not. Let's hope that all the freaking celebrities are all the celebrities are busy, Doug. They're all wrestling Saturday and Sunday nights.
I know, right?
There's
Somebody
so
called Bad
many
Bunny. He
celebrities.
needs to spot that WrestleMania weekend.
Oh, it's kind of
At least you
ridiculous.
got McAfee in there, so
Yeah,
he can wrestle.
we could have stopped with one celebrity and let it be him, and then forget your Aaron Pauls and who else? There's somebody
Johnny
else.
Knoxville.
Johnny Knox. I mean, it's like way too much of that. Like one, you get one, and let it be Pat
Right.
McAfee because at least he can, work.
Yeah,
But
yeah. But
let's
anyway,
the very first person, Doug, that we have, and I think that I know how we're both going to end up judging this one, but let's talk about the person that, if it is in fact an hour and a half broadcast, that's probably going to take up a good 50% of that. And Vince McMahon himself, who normally doesn't even appear on camera for the Hall of Fame, is making an exception to be the one to do the induction of probably the guy that they're going to build the whole Hall of Fame around whenever they do get a physical location. Let's do Undertaker.
Absolutely, man. I mean, this man is truly a legend in this sport. I mean, my God, he went, 30 years in character where you would never see him out of character. And it's, let's be honest. And at one point, it was a pretty cheesy character. I mean, he's playing a undead, like, Undertaker. He's a zombie mortician. That you can't get any more cartoony 80s wrestling than that.
Look at the era that he debuted. It was right at the end of that era when that transition was being made. He was one of the last of the characters where you had to be an actual occupation or whatever. And how much of that, when you look at the wrestling, Isaac Yankem, or the wrestling like the Knuckleball Schwartz that would come out in an outfit, or like you look at all those horrible gimmicks. The Goon, who came out as he's a hockey player, none of that stuff survived. And to his credit, the Undertaker took something that should not in any way survive the cartoon era of professional wrestling and was smart enough to adapt it to become beloved and believable, and took what was seemed like could have been a career death knell and turned it into a 30-year career.
Hey, the dude made it work and constantly evolved it to keep up with the times, while yet somehow keeping true to the character. When, again, we're talking about essentially a zombie mortician, a wild west Undertaker.
Yeah. Do you actually do you have any memories or recollections at all of Mean Mark?
I do not, actually. All my Mean Mark Calloway memories are not memories. They're like old tapes, that I've acquired throughout the years, or seen stuff on YouTube and stuff like that. How about you?
I actually do remember him very, very briefly. I remember him. I remember, Paul Levesque, or was it Levesque that they pronounced in WCW? I can't remember, but I actually do remember them on WCW, and Mean Mark being one. I don't remember him in World Class, but I have seen on on WWE Network Texas Red, which is
yes,
under the hood. But no doubt about it that Mean Mark wasn't cutting it in WCW. It was not long for WCW. I think Texas Red had the one match in World Class, and then of course the big reveal of the Undertaker at Survivor Series is where he made his debut in the early 90s. Obviously, Paul Bearer was a big part of his presentation at first. Doug, for the newer fans out there who may not remember the origins of this gimmick and the beginnings of the Undertaker, may not realize that that Undertaker, as good a wrestler as the Undertaker you all remember is, that Undertaker didn't have to really wrestle. He really was the gimmick. He
was the gimmick, the no sell, the big guy, no sell, because, well, he was dead. You really couldn't hurt the dude, right?
You can't hurt a dead man. You punch him, he just stares at you. He's down, suddenly sets back up.
Yep, exactly.
And so the matches were often not very long because, to Doug's point, you can't beat a dead man.
Exactly. That which is dead cannot die.
Now that he actually reflects on his career and talks a bit about the past, he will admit himself that as someone who could work and knew how to work and was athletic for his size, that it was hard for him to go out there and not sell and not do the things he had been taught to do.
Mhm.
But I guess there was some sense to it in what he was being told, and that this is the gimmick. You wrestle to the gimmick, and you don't necessarily go do everything you can do. That is maybe not true to the gimmick. And the
Right.
man, if you could say anything about him, he
Without
was true to that gimmick.
absolutely, totally true to that gimmick, man. My goodness.
That
The dude did evolve the gimmick to what, in the 90s I called the underbiker there with the American badass period, where, he embraced the lifestyle and, was riding a bike to the ring. A good refresh of the character, and I think much needed there when he was in his American badass period. But, eventually it always comes back around to the dead man. And
well,
he
yeah,
was able to tie the dead man gimmick into like the whole biker gimmick too, So
he was able to take the character back to its roots without back to the cheesiness.
yeah,
So the
exactly.
Undertaker that actually proved that he could actually wrestle and go out there and have long form contests of back and forth, he was able to bring at a really more of an advanced age. Let's be honest. He wasn't the same young spring chicken, and had almost a second act of
Mhm.
the dead man character, where honestly his most memorable matches, because he actually was able to have these as full-fledged matches, really were post the first 6-7 years of the gimmick.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll be honest, I didn't care for the gimmick when it first started. It was around the time of, I was obviously hardcore into all the wrestling that was out there, but I was so bent on the realism of WCW compared to the cartoonishness, that as soon as I saw the undead mortician, it wasn't for me. I didn't like the no sell. I didn't find the matches interesting. I thought it was cheesy. And then the Undertaker becomes a biker, and then he goes back to and has these matches that he had with like Shawn and things. It's like, yeah, like I'm all in. I'm all Undertaker. Doug, some of your favorite matches. What are some of your favorite Undertaker matches, if you had to throw some out there?
I know we just talked about great matches at WrestleMania last week, but you put Shawn Michaels and the Undertaker in any match at WrestleMania, and it was like, okay, yeah, there's a favorite Undertaker match, back to back, even with
Yes, we may have talked about it, but how do you not mention WrestleMania matches? He was
right.
That streak was so much a part of a majority of, there's 30. Well, he's 22-2. So for 24 WrestleManias, we're on 38 this year. Do the math. Like, for the majority of what anybody can remember, particularly if you're a younger fan, maybe until the last couple of years, like every WrestleMania in your memory involved The Undertaker. And it was a showcase for him. And as such, those matches with Shawn, the match he had with Triple H, was also extremely good. The match he had with Ric Flair, seeing two legends like that at that point, like the match he had with Orton when Cowboy Bob got involved and still had the cast on his arm. Like, there was so many WrestleMania moments involving The Undertaker because he's so synonymous with the event. But I too, Doug, of course, would say you have to call out two Hell in a Cell matches. The first, the Hell in a Cell match he had with Shawn, which still may be actually the best overall Hell in a Cell match. And then, of course, the most famous one of, my God, they've killed him.
Yeah. Yeah. But, you probably also have to, if we're talking about famous, this is more of an infamous Taker match, but we have to mention, Saudi Arabia with Goldberg. And I mean, it has to be mentioned that, I mean, this consummate professional in the business, clearly frustrated throughout this match because he recognizes exactly what's going on there and is trying to just get through and put on the show that he's put on for what, 30 years at this point, really? 28, 29, 30 years late into his career, not really wanting to go out like that, but putting this out into the world.
I mean,
frustration on this man's face.
He will be the first to admit that he himself wasn't in the best of shape at that time. And he probably, it's when he started to doubt how much longer he should be doing it. But we also know he is a consummate professional. And even if he wasn't at his best, that one is not on him.
Absolutely. But the frustration is apparent, man. Truly, go back and watch that on Peacock if you know it'll let you watch things because Peacock hates me. But go back and watch that one. It's not one of those must sees, but you know, just to see the frustration.
Yeah.
He knows the direction it's heading in, and regardless of what he does, he just cannot course correct.
Well, I wasn't going to, since you bring that one up, Doug, I will bring up one I hadn't planned because I don't think it's one, honestly, his best matches. It isn't Hell in a Cell. It isn't, Sean match at Mania. But because that match was so bad that you mentioned Saudi Arabia, he did have a fitting final act. It was in the Hollywood style of the cinematic era of wrestling. But as far as that era goes, that probably was the best that it was done. That was probably the highlight, the beginning, and really the high point of those pre-filmed matches. So he did have one more Mania moment, and the last that fans will remember of him is that match with AJ, which was really entertaining.
And it remained true to the character while bringing back in elements from throughout the character's life, where you had the American badass, but you also had the undead, but more of a terrifying instead of a cartoony undead kind of. I think the way he should be remembered, not that like late '80s, like you say, insert occupation, insert supernatural ability, go wrestle kind of thing.
And it allowed them to tell a story without putting the performers in a position to maybe not be able to execute in the way that they would like to. So by pre-filming it, Undertaker had one last ride that is going to be memorable and a fitting coda to his legacy as opposed to maybe continuing going out there and being disappointed in yourself and then trying it once more and continuing to see maybe diminishing returns. Quite honestly, age catches us all, including the big man, but or the dead man.
The dead man. Maybe we can talk about the big man next.
Well, I was going to say attribute-wise, he's athletic for a big man. Longevity, he changed the gimmick as he needed to change the gimmick. He lived the gimmick. Even in the modern era of kayfabe being dead, he did not do interviews. He was not seen out of character. He wasn't, he lived it. And it is probably worth also noting for all the accolades we have given and all the matches we've talked about behind the scenes, the history of the Undertaker is that there's a reason why when they had wrestling court, Undertaker was the judge. He, for 30 years, was the leader of the locker room, the moral center, the one you went to fix the problems before you took it to management. He had that same respect from management, which is why Vince McMahon is breaking his own rule to do the induction. I mean, he is as close as you get to being an executive without being on the executive
seat. True. Yeah,
there's absolutely. No more respect given in WWE than that to the Undertaker. So I think this is going to be maybe the weak part of our show here, Doug, because I have with each of these, we have to decide, deserving or not deserving. But I think that we maybe have already said that about this. But there is no more deserving.
No more deserving. Absolutely. It's about time. Now that the career is over, now that he does break character, it's time.
You ready to move on to another big man?
Let's do it.
This big man, while he definitely had his moments in WWE, Doug, for me, my first memory of him, Big Van Vader, that is, Leon White, was AEW.
AEW?
Not AEW, AWA.
Okay. It's like, dude, what AEW are you watching? Papa Tony has the power.
It's Dark Plus. It's over on Honor Club. There's a 4 a.m. on YouTube sub channels. AWA. I remember Leon White, and I remember him getting my attention. But Doug, I'm going to guess you probably. I don't know if you had WA access.
It would be WCW for me, man. Yeah,
WCW. Honestly, I think even though he's going into the WWE Hall of Fame, his best work was WCW for me.
Absolutely.
Doug, what would you say about the attributes of Leon White?
I think this sums it up. I was watching some interviews with folks talking about Vader today, in preparation for the show, and I don't even remember who mentioned it now, but I think this sums up Vader. a 400 man who can do a 400-pound man that can do a moonsault off the top rope. There you go. There you go. That's Vader. That is him.
You know, if you wanted to draw a line between the first two inductees we're talking about, the things that make them both stand out is, yes, they had size, but both of them were way more athletic than a person their size should be. And I think
Explosive speed, agility. I mean, this is what you look for. These both of these guys were legit premier athletes. I mean, Vader, college football, professional football, a Super Bowl winner, then goes on to wrestling. But this guy was another one of those like total package premier athletes.
He was stiff. You talk about a punch. You look at a Vader punch. You do not see light. The man was stiff. Mm-hmm. I also think he was just a very believable bad guy. There's some characters you watch and you know it's a character, and you think to yourself, I bet in real life he's probably a big teddy bear. But I truly watched Vader and thought to myself, I bet if I saw that guy backstage, I would not approach him for an autograph because I'm not sure how that would go. I just stay out of his way, which is great that you can actually get that kind of aura going about you.
Right.
I like WCW. The reason I love the WCW years so much better really is that the pairing they had with Harley Race as an old school fan, seeing that also gave him a legitimacy. Like, I mean, that's one of the greatest world champions of all time, and he's your manager. I mean, my goodness.
Yeah, Vader, good stuff. I mean, I being a big guy myself, I love it to see the really athletic big guys pulling off the 205 live kind of moves. I love that. Vader was one of those guys who could do that. I mean,
your
not so much in his later years.
Your moveset's really lacking, comparatively speaking, Doug.
What's that? Who?
You said your moonsault is actually really lacking compared to his.
Well, I haven't had the professional training that you've had, Kevin, but I'm an indie guy. You're more of a sports entertainer.
And as we're learning, there is a distinction.
Indeed, there is.
Oh man, WCW, Doug and Vader. I think that, I want to, obviously with all these folks, just like we did with Undertaker, call out some of his best matches. My favorite Vader matches are WCW matches. So I'm going to say that Foley, Vader, anytime Foley and Vader got together, Vader was not going to pull his punch and Mick was not going to pull his fall. So they worked really well together to look like, at the time, it was actually pretty innovative. Some of the matches they had were so stiff that it was not what at the time in the era you were used to seeing. This was pre-ECW, and the bumps that Mick would take and the punches and the lariats and the things that Vader would throw at him were way more snug than what we saw on American television.
And can we take just a moment to acknowledge the awesome ring gear that this man would come to the ring in? I mean, this is some Cthulhuing, like dystopian Vader, true to his name, Dark Lord, kind of like, I don't even know. It was more than a mask, but it kind of paid homage to his football background, where you had it was just this giant headpiece of a thing that was just terrifying, which I love to this day. And I don't even know how to describe it.
May also go a long way in explaining why I believed him as a bad guy. Like from the moment he stepped through the curtain and you saw the size and that thing, you instantly had a chill run down your spine.
I mean, this was this huge, terrifying behemoth that, was making its way to the ring. I mean, truly the monster heel in every aspect.
Monster being the key word there for sure.
Right.
He had a really great contest with Ric Flair too. It's noted that Vader was a world champion, and he had a match with Flair at a Starrcade that was also just fantastic. Doug, do you have particular memories or matches that, unless I just stole it?
Like I was going to say the Flair, but I did want to get in there about that, just his ring gear too, because I mean, again, joking about the sports entertainment aside, that whole presentation of the character, as much as his in-ring ability, And of course, you put him up against Flair. I mean, again, I could have a great match with Flair of today. Me and Ric Flair could go out here in the front yard, and Flair would put me over and make me look great. But Flair didn't need to put Vader over. You know, that was a contest of champions right there.
And one of differences making for a greater whole. You had the athletic big man and Ric Flair, who for 80% of his matches would be the guy getting beat up. So you had someone who could sell and be the chicken and beg him off, and you had the big monster that was just throwing him around, catching him up before he could come off the top rope, being real nice and stiff, and then Flair would do the comeback, to overcome the odds there. It was a good pairing. He did get into sports entertainment, and that he did have a run in WWE, and it was fine. But I'm glad he did, because that's where you're going to make your money, and I'm sure it helped him retire more comfortably. But it should be noted at that point, because of the style he wrestled and his size, it was a broke down version of Vader. He would even admit that he couldn't do the things that he had been used to doing by the time he got to that tail end of his career there in WWE.
I think there's very much a thread that runs through both the Undertaker and Vader's career here, as you see them arc over their career, that eventually they get to a point where the old dudes just can't go like they used to. And something like a cinematic match would have been great for Vader, a Vader swan song. Didn't have that because that wasn't a thing.
Wasn't a thing.
But still, an excellent talent.
Before we move on, I think it should be pointed out that while I say I really prefer WCW and some of the matches there, and I remember from AWA, and he finishes in WWE, he's probably an even bigger star in the country of Japan. Most will say that his real legacy and his best work was done over there. I didn't see much of that. I honestly, what bits and pieces I've seen have all been in retrospect in later years going back. But when you consider his abilities and the way that his style was, you can see how easy it would be for him to be loved in Japan because of, one, his size, making him stand out, and then he would easily fit in with the Japanese strong style.
Oh, absolutely.
The stiffnesses of the punches and the kicks were prime importance. He would have just eaten that up.
Absolutely.
So deserving, Doug.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Once again, hands down.
Vader, a Hall of Famer.
Absolutely.
I agree. Obviously, the Undertaker. The what now?
I said, and speaking of strong style, that leads us to our next inductee.
Well, before we go to that next inductee, I do realize too, should be pointed out, because Leon White is no longer with us. Of our three inductees, this one's going to be posthumous, so this will probably be a real short speech, because it'll probably be a family member or someone accepting it. That's another reason why it's going to be almost completely an Undertaker focused show.
Yeah, because everything I've seen has whoever is inducting him is still TBA. So a few weeks out, and we still don't know who's actually inducting Vader. So
you have all this time devoted, I'm sure, to the Undertaker, and then a posthumous induction for someone who's not going to be there to make a speech, and then that leads us to number 3, and that is Queen Sharmell. Doug, Queen Sharmell. My first memory of Sharmell, as I'm sure it will be yours, is Nitro Girl Storm.
Interestingly enough, I do not remember her as Nitro Girl Storm. I think the only really Nitro Girl that stands out was Diamond Dallas Page's wife, and I can't even think of her name right now. But that's because I think that's the Nitro Girl that got the most attention as far as Nitro Girls go, and got the most mention by name, I think. But I didn't even realize until researching for this that Sharmell was a Nitro Girl.
She was a Nitro Girl and had spent, honestly, more of her wrestling career would have been in WCW. As the Nitro Girl moved into the world of valeting, she first broke from the Nitro Girls to manage Prince Iakea, or Ikea, I think is how he pronounced it. Doug, do you remember Prince Iakea?
I do not.
Doug does not remember much of him. I think Doug was hit on the head.
I do not, man.
Well, This is good that you don't remember.
Because even Charmel, and maybe I'm just associating Charmel and Booker T too closely together, because other than the King Booker era of WWE, I don't really recall anything that Charmel's done. But apparently, she was training to wrestle and was looking to be an active talent. But went from Nitro Girl to maybe some dark matches, training to be a wrestler, but was relegated to valet and eventually, the wife of Booker T, which later became her manager, which I do love the parallel between, Booker T and Charmel and Randy Savage and Elizabeth. But I just find it odd that WWE, who's not really big on managers, is inducting somebody who's a manager and a very recent manager at that.
Well, I'm going to test your memory one more time because she managed in WCW. I know you don't remember Prince Ikea, but you do remember the WCW when Vince Russo got involved and then suddenly everybody became a character.
Everybody was a character, sure.
So Prince Ikea was renamed the artist formerly known as Prince Ikea.
Of course he was. Have I just blocked this out?
I'm thinking that you've just blocked it out because of how bad it is, because Charmel went from being Charmel, the manager of Prince Ikea, to him just being the artist and her being Paisley.
Okay, so I was reading about how she went from Nitro Girl Storm to Nitro Girl Paisley, and I'm like, okay, that's clearly a Prince reference. Now it comes full circle for my old Mark brain. So, okay.
I would hope that your old Mark brain was intentionally trying to forget that, because as with most things Vince Russo era WCW, it was really, really bad.
Was there a contract on a pole match at some point to get his original name back? Because Russo loved the contract on the pole match.
Anything on a pole, he was all
anything on a pole.
Doug, as you said, she did train to be a wrestler. We never saw her actual wrestle. I'd read that she'd actually was injured during her time in Ohio Valley Wrestling, which used to be she was a manager in WCW, but when she went over to WWE now, she was originally sent to go get trained to be a wrestler, but that just never was her path. Most folks are going to remember her, obviously, as the Queen, to play off her husband's gimmick of winning the King of the Ring. They were together prior to that, but I don't really remember her as being as big a part of the act as it was when the over-the-top King Booker shtick.
Right. Yeah, I remember the King Booker. King Booker.
Horrible English accent, and yeah.
And wasn't there a little bit of overrun into that from that, like his TNA Impact eras, or that era when he came over there and had the like really bizarre accent when he was in the main event Mafia? Wasn't Charmel around then as well?
She did, yeah. She was with him in Impact too.
Yeah.
It was interesting that she would like come and go. She would, as his real life wife, she would sometimes be part of the act. And I guess when she maybe was doing other things or taking care of home or what a career interest she might have had, there were long stretches where she just would be off television.
That's one of the things for me that hits a little differently, because I don't necessarily I don't dislike this choice, but I don't necessarily understand it. I mean, that's great. Let's get some more women in here. Let's get some more women of color in the Hall of Fame. Absolutely.
So that's where I get into, I feel almost bad saying it. I want to talk deserving, not deserving. And to your point, we need more women. We need more women of color in the Hall of Fame. But I don't think we need people in the Hall of Fame just for any of those reasons, because we need that representation. It's deserving, not deserving. And for me, I just don't see it. I almost wonder if this is as much a nod to Booker and his long relationship with WWE, and not saying that Charmel wasn't good, but to me, Hall of Fame is great.
30-year Hall of Fame is worthy of someone who has a 30-year career who never broke character in public.
Exactly. You want it to be exclusive. And so in order to keep it exclusive, you need to only let the best of the best in there. And I know we can make arguments about a lot of people that WWE has let in just because they were friends of the family, or, Vince's limo driver's in there or something like that, right? I mean, yeah. So there's a lot of questionable choices. we're not saying that. I'm not saying that, I guess, about Sharmell. She was very good. She definitely made the Booker act better, but I don't know if good is the same as Hall of Fame. And to me, I never would have seen Queen Sharmell and her limited time as a valet / manager / Nitro girl before that as leading to a world Wrestling Entertainment Hall of Fame induction.
I think we're probably both on the same page in saying that Sharmell as a character, Queen Sharmell as a character in the WWE is not the same caliber of inductee as the Undertaker or Vader.
Yes.
But to your point, if Donald Trump can be in there, hell yeah, Queen Sharmell deserves to be in there too. That's all I got to say about that, man.
Well, if you put it that way. And with that, Doug, those are the only inductees we have. But those three will make for the entirety of the broadcast unless they add somebody in the next couple of weeks, which they are rumored to do. Undertaker obviously going to get the bulk of that time. Sharmell probably will have a short speech, and then Leon is not with us. So I do think we're not going to be looking at a long rambling evening because the Undertaker is not going to be the top to go on forever. Even though he talks now, I have a feeling it'll be worth hearing, but it'll also be to the point, and I doubt it will be very long.
I agree. Although I think it is cool that Booker T gets to induct his wife. So
I think so too. And I do think that she definitely made him and his act better. Absolutely. He probably wouldn't be as much of a Hall of Famer in my mind if it wasn't for the work of his brother and his wife in making his character and his career as varied as it was.
Agreed.
Give him that. And Doug, with that, are you ready to go to the big finish, my friend?
Let's go to the big finish. I got notes again tonight, my little green wrestling notebook.
Well, my goodness, Doug with doing the homework. I think he felt bad all those weeks his internet didn't work, so he got out pen and paper, went old school, and started making notes.
I have totally gone old school. Right there it is. You can see my notes. Feel free to pause and try and decipher that chicken scratch in the replays, everybody.
You will not be able to, trust me, even if you see the words.
Even if you can decipher the chicken scratch, only Kevin and a few other people on the planet are fluent in Doug speak. So.
Doug, why don't you do a little speaking for us? You tell me where you want to start on the 1, 2, 3.
Let's do performer of the week first, because I got wild wrestling theories, and what's a wrestling fan without their wild theories, right?
I'm fine for going performer.
So let's go performer, because I'm going to talk about the Jericho Appreciation Society.
The floor is yours, sir.
I see, first of all, I think Jericho looks the best that he has looked in quite a while. I think he's looking a lot leaner. He just looks overall good. Good for him, man. Good for him. There's another body with a long and storied career that's pushing close to 30 years, I'm sure. But Jericho is looking good. He's always talking great. Continually reinvents himself. Love that. And I really love the heat that he is getting on his new group by working a sports entertainment angle, which I think long term, because AEW is about the long term. You look what Jericho's doing, building a stable with the Jericho Appreciation Society. He's still got, cousin Jake as his heater, or Jax, not Jake. But he's got Hager as his heater. He's got the new tag team. He's got the new young guy who is very much a sports entertainer now. And then on the other side in AEW, you have these incredibly violent gentlemen who are wrestlers, who are putting together slowly and starting to build a stable of their very own. You are eventually going to see wrestlers versus sports entertainers within AEW, the divide that is a lot of our fandom anyway, for those people who really want to take a side one versus another. And I think Jericho, it may not have been his inception, but he has definitely delivered the first shot in this war that is going to come. And I loved every minute of it this week.
Jericho you could take any one of his personas and induct it into a Hall of Fame because they have all been that distinct and all have been that successful. And honestly, at this point in his career, I thought he'd maybe ride it out as the legend who, helped come over to AEW and give it a little star power to start and did good work and enjoyed himself while doing it. And then he goes and reinvents himself again and even finds his abs in the process. Like, who does that at like 51? I mean, you know, with every reinvention, you go back 3 reinventions ago and say that, you know, he was already one of the all-time greats. But the fact that he can continue to do it at such a high level, he will go down as one of the all-time greats without question.
Absolutely.
Speaking of, I'm going for my performer of the week with one of the all-time greats. My performer of the week is Scott Hall. To me,
Yep.
I mean, there was so much from the opening of Raw, starting with Kevin Owens with his "Hey Yo," to the spray paint angle they did on NXT 2.0, to the Britt Baker on AEW and her choice of ring gear that she had, being a homage to the bad guy. The Scott Hall references were everywhere this week. Some of them were very blatant. Some of them were really hidden. You just had to know to know.
There are definitely Easter eggs out there. Yeah.
One final, her last hurrah for the bad guy, across promotions, across shows, everyone giving tribute. It was a nice way for the wrestling world to pay tribute to a legend. And for that reason, I picked Scott Hall as my performer of the week.
I cannot disagree with that, man. Hall, one last round for the bad guy, man.
One last round for the bad guy. If you didn't see our last show, folks, go back and check it out. We do a deep dive into our memories of Scott Hall and our own little tribute. It's worth seeing if you were a Scott Hall fan. Doug, you want to go next to botch or match?
Let's go botch, because my botch is kind of fun, but I want to end on like a match.
I want to end on a match too. We may end on the same match. I have a feeling.
But I want to go with the botch, and it's kind of a fun botch. Sure. I know I pick on WWE a lot, but we are music guys above beyond wrestling guys. We're music guys too. We make music together. Check out our other stuff for that. Maybe we'll put some links down below. We do have a new song coming out soon. But Rick Boogs, playing in Shinsuke like he normally does this week. Michael Cole, I rewound it 3 times to make sure I heard what Michael Cole said, because Rick Boogs is playing a Kramer guitar. It looks similar to a Jackson or a Gibson V, has more of a Jackson look to it. But Michael Cole mentions Rick Boogs' new Gibson guitar.
Yes.
Dude, it says Kramer on the headstock. That is not a Gibson Flying V at all. It says Kramer on the headstock. So I just thought I'd have a little fun with that one.
Actually, I love that Doug would call out Michael Cole for getting the brand of guitar incorrect. That is classic Doug and classic Cole.
Vintage Doug.
It's vintage Doug, as Michael Cole would say. My botch of the week maybe is less fun, but no less annoying. Listen, I get it. We change names all the time in this business. I'm not crazy about Walter not being Walter, but fine. I mean, it's not that different. I guess we could get used to it. But if you're going to change someone's name to something really stupid, Pete Dunn is not Butch from the Little Rascals, but apparently that's where Vince McMahon got his idea. At least Walter still looks the same with a different name. But now you dress him up like a 1930s schoolboy, schoolyard bully, and you take one of the legit toughest guys on your roster, and you turn him into Butch.
I do not like that at all. And they give the nod. It's almost like a wink, like, yeah, I get that I'm pissing you off, but I'm still doing it by going, you fans may know him by something else, but
his friends call him Butch.
They've always known him as Butch. No.
Did his friends also make him dress like that?
Right. Go play a new Gibson guitar, Butch, with Rick Boogs.
So I would have called it out last week because it bothered me with the debut. Like, why would you do that to Pete Dunne? But yeah, this week I'm giving it my botch, and that is Butch. Doug, let's end on a positive note.
let's end on a positive note. Let me say, I
Match of the
heard a
week.
little bit of Bully Ray talking about this match, and he said, it just didn't hit right for him. There was something wrong with it. It was rushed. There were problems with it, and if these performers would just admit to that, he would have a lot more understanding. Like if they're running short on time and they just decided to wrap it up, and admit that it there was something wrong somewhere, it would have been a lot better to him. But he needed that. I don't know if he's playing the character Bully Ray or what, but I'm calling bullshit on that, man. Thunder Rosa, Britt Baker, they crushed it this week on Dynamite. I don't see how or what this man is talking about.
I did not know of Bully's comments, but I will say, for my part, I do believe this is the first time I've ever had my match of the week be the same as my prior week's botch of the week. Last week, I called out Thunder Rosa and Britt Baker for having my expectations so high for the Revolution match, and then it just kind of went out there as a dud and did not even come close to their classic encounter last year in their Lights Out contest. Maybe these women need blood. I don't know if that's what gets their juices flowing. But once they got in that hardcore environment again, they not only did they prove me a liar from the prior week, they upped what expectations I would have had for this contest by putting on the best match of the week. They beat the crap out of one another. They bled. That plotting revolution contest, I've already forgot about it because Thunder Rosa winning the women's championship from Britt Baker in her adopted hometown of San Antonio. I mean, the match was great. The environment was great. The crowd was great. They picked the right spot for all of it. It was perfect, Doug. Perfect.
I really wonder if, and wrestling, especially sports entertainment, is apt to do this from time to time. One match is the setup for the next match. And now I really wonder if that Revolution was the setup for this match at the end of things, when, Thunder Rosa finally captures this from, Dr. Britt Baker, DMD.
And it was a very lengthy title run that DMD had. So let's call out the fact that she definitely elevated that championship. We were always a little critical on the start of AEW's women's division, but I think that you can say that Britt Baker is the one who made the AEW women's division.
Absolutely. I think, that very early on Lights Out match with, Thunder Rosa helped catapult her along the way. Not saying that she's not an excellent talent all on her own, because she totally is. And we've talked about this before. I am not a fan of those hardcore matches, but I am consistently entertained when these two women go at it like they went at it.
So, I'm like you. I seem like I hear myself on our show a lot saying that I prefer technical wrestling, and I'm not but yeah, this is the second straight week I've had as my match of the week, like the bloodiest match of the week was also my match of the week. So maybe I'm more of a sadist than I want to actually admit on air.
Maybe we both are.
Call us out in the comments, folks. We apparently like the blood. But yeah, these two women definitely gave their all, and kudos to them for both providing us with one match to remember. And now they'll be each other's Ricky Steamboat to the other's Ric Flair. I mean, these two work so well together.
Absolutely. And the genuine reaction from Thunder Rosa when she won the bout, just beautiful, man. Just beautiful.
Yep. I'll be interested to see where they go with the Britt character, if she stays in the world title scene with the rematch, or they give Thunder Rosa a little run and Britt something to do elsewhere on the card before they put the two back together. But they will have to come back together because they just work too good.
Absolutely.
Folks, you see at the bottom of our screen, we got the scroll going about what we have coming up in our future weeks, and that is all Mania all the time, because next week, we are getting stupendous, Doug. We're talking WrestleMania. Next week is going to be our preview show. We'll talk about every match that's booked for Mania, who we predict is going to win, who we predict is going to lose, and then we're going to be back on Mania Sunday with two shows. First time in Two Bros history. Two Bros, two shows.
Love it.
We're going to be live before the Sunday night show to talk about the Saturday show. give our review, and then we'll be back at the conclusion 7 hours later, probably, of WrestleMania Night 2 to talk about what we thought of the concluding night of WrestleMania. So, Doug, are you ready to preview it for the folks next week?
There's a whole lot of wrestling going on, and I am nowhere near ready for it, but I don't know that anybody is ready for all the wrestling we're about to digest during WrestleMania season.
Ready or not, here it comes.
Here it comes.
We'll talk about it next week. Two Bros Wrestling Show live Sunday, 8 Eastern on YouTube. Well, next day airing here on Facebook if you're watching us there. Wherever you're watching us, thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Doug, night.
What? Oh, good night.